structure, system, and Yahoo. That and more this week out in space with Sam Singer. Point in time updates. Ken is still not really getting sleep. Somehow, after 2.5 and some change years, we have not really figured out the whole sleep cycle thing. We have acquired childcare in full, or at least what full means to us. So looking forward to that bringing some balance back into our life. And for those of you introduced to the interstellar comet that we have coming through our solar system right now, 3i Atlas will be making its closest approach December 19th. So for those of you with your home astronomy setups, get that tripod up and running and go take a peek out back. On the home front, Luker is back on American soil. Welcome, friend. Tread Day line is now just a few hours away with a little bit of grayness in our group chat trying to figure that out. And we got Turkey Day coming up, which means happy birthday to Elise and happy early birthday to Beckham's first trip around the sun. Sam, let's take our conversation into the present. Besides waking up way too early today, what does your daily life look like on the weekends?
Oh, on the weekends, wake up, have some coffee, sit there with the cup as long as Scarlett will let us. And then, try to get out of the house a little bit with Scar, hit the parks, cruise around town. Scar likes being on the move. So, kind of just play it by ear. We're fortunate enough to live by Hannah's parents, so we go down there a lot, spend some time, especially when it's warm out. Let the grandparents chase Scarlett around the house for a while. But yeah, that's the big weekends these days, crazy.
That sounds very familiar. So when you guys say early, what time is Scar usually slipping in? So how long do you get with that coffee on a good day?
Scar usually sleeps until usually around 7:30.
Okay.
So just depends what time we get up and get going. I like to have at least an hour, I would say, to myself with my coffee just to chill and get going with the day. So yeah, it totally depends.
I see. And are you an alarm person? Are you just naturally waking at 6 and then just having that really restful kind of, give yourself a whole hour to get going type of deal? Or are you just ripping yourself out of the coffin, at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. or whatever it is?
No, I'm not an alarm person usually. So usually, naturally waking up around, I don't know, 6:30ish, something like that. And getting out of bed, coming downstairs, making a little espresso. Yeah.
I absolutely love it. I can't for the life of me do that. In my earlier years, I was in the service industry for a few years, and open up Einstein's or open up Starbucks, in the ass crack in the morning. And just, never could get even close to waking up naturally around 6, even after having years and years of that morning cycle. And so I love that morning, kind of quiet as well. I, again, too many things in my life overdo it. And so I, in my sick ways, decide to wake up at 4 a.m. most of the time so that I get 2 hours, before stuff starts. Because Chloe historically has been a pretty early riser. The 6 to 6:30 window is usually when she start moving around. And so just to get that guaranteed time in, that's kind of been my go-to. Let's say hobbies. I know we've seen and we've been the benefactor of a few of the fruits of your labors as a content creator or as a creative. But are there any other hobbies that you have tucked away on a shelf somewhere that we should know about, Sam?
Man, that's a good question. No, not really. I mean, photography and some of the writing stuff, and obviously love movies and TV. So I don't know if that really counts as a hobby, but just get super into a good story. I read a ton as well. I don't know if that really counts as a hobby, but no, I've been thinking about that recently, and it's tough to get consistent with hobbies, as you know, when you've got a young one running around. So there's a lot of things that I would love to do, but we'll see. if time frees up a little bit here.
Yeah, no, I definitely think reading counts. That's been one of the things that I've been trying to weave back into life, and part of it is that you don't get to choose when you get to do it, right? With the time slots are just kind of given to you by the kiddo, as opposed to you being able to just kind of meander over to the couch and just like have a nice read. And so I've got the old Kindle out just so that I can have it like whenever. And then so if it's like dark, and I'm like next to the kid, they could get a little bit of reading in there. What's your like preferred reading method?
I usually read in bed before falling asleep. It's kind of my wind down.
Yeah.
So just sit in bed and read for 20 or 30 minutes unless I get super into it, and then I'm up until like 1 a.m. So yeah. And then I also I've been having to drive a ton this year. Like I've been driving like 100 miles, 200 miles a day, 3 or 4 times a week, and so I kind of got tired of news, so I switched over to audiobooks, and that's been like great. It's made those drives like actually I look forward to them sometimes. So doesn't really count as reading, but still consuming stories and making my way through, especially like these gargantuan fantasy epics that are like 1,400 pages long. So yeah.
I think that like I don't know, for whatever reason I just had this bias against audiobooks. Like I don't know if it was like I just had like a family member who did it one time. I was like, oh, you're perverting like what is reading or whatever. But especially for like the California people that have these commutes, it makes a lot of sense, right? And I think that was one of the things that we've talked about this a little bit, just about how you got to get all this good time, and it makes a lot more sense than just like my routine, which would like pop on some like hardcore, like metal or whatever, and just be like seething with rage because I didn't want to be doing whatever it was I was doing, going to work, right? As opposed to like, letting yourself go with the flow of the story. I had one more little tick. I was like, if you want to just go back to childhood, I was thinking like, I had like a rock collection, or I got like really into space, like obviously when I was young. I'm thinking like hobbies in that sense too. Did you have any like weird little hobbies that you had maybe like high school or before?
Well, I was super into space too, actually, when I was a kid. I wanted to be an astronaut until I was like 15. So super into that. But no, I played sports. So most of my free time, like growing up, I kind of had the idyllic, like lived on a cul-de-sac with a whole bunch of kids. And when there was free time, we'd be outside. And, a lot of times that was like throwing the old pigskin or just running around, playing kick the can. Um, Trying to think, I don't think I had any like major hobbies. As a family, we loved board games and we would do a lot of movie nights. So those are kind of the staples that I remember for that nice like joint family time. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, got it. Sticking with the family and kind of going back to Scar, what milestone are we at with her now? What's the big update with Scar?
Scarlett has joined Al Qaeda. She's forming a sleeper cell out of our house here. She's a year and a half old. She is right on the precipice of full blown talking. She's like super chatty. She's got, I think, a lot of pent up frustration because she wants to communicate, but she doesn't have the tools. So that combined with her kind of learning these new emotions and opinions, is like this roller coaster throughout the day of just these like hilarious, heartwarming moments, and then just total emotional warfare. So and it can switch on a dime. It's like she will conduct this warfare on us for like 4 straight hours, and then I don't. You just give her a little yogurt pouch, and then she just switches, and she's this little angel, and you as a rational adult have to like try to pull yourself out of the.
I think that's part of the Al Qaeda playbook, right? Is that that just hard switching, right? But yeah, no, 100%. I can relate to that. Mel sent me something the other day. It was just talking about like not only with kids but with parents, right? That like we process things at different times, right? So like not only is that like wave of disruption of your like emotional baseline happening, or the misalignment of the frequency is not only between like you and the kid, but then you and your partner, right? And so, yeah, it's this complicated, little buoys floating around in the water, and there's all these waves and, super troughs and waves going on and stuff. And then, and then it just goes quiet once something happens. And then, then your rational adult brain is like, why is this going on? Right. Rather than just being like, oh, there's this simple moment of Zen where yogurt has brought complete happiness to the present moment for little Scar. Right. And so, having had, Chloe's about a year older, so like one more trip around the sun without experience. That was kind of a big point of, maybe not emphasis, because I don't really feel like I chose it, but just trying to like remember how present the little critters are. And like when I talk to people about kids, that's always seemingly the thing I always come back to, is that they're these little Zen critters that are just always so present with their emotions. And especially like I can relate to that tension, right? That like, as somebody who always has too much going on up here and like not being able to get it out, right? And everybody has been at the wrong end of a Ken space story, right? And so like, that's kind of akin to like a Scarlet, right? Who like doesn't have the words maybe to get out the concept that she wants to communicate. And so there's this frustration, right? How let's say on the language side, what is like the biggest development that she's had in like the last month? So if she's like trying to communicate something, is there like is it like action? Is it or is it like nouns, or like, let's touch on the language before we step into the fantasy stuff.
Yeah, she well, I think the biggest thing over the last maybe 6 weeks is she learned how to like say yes to answer in the affirmative. For the longest time it was just no, 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 even when no was yes.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And so that's been huge, because she can be upset and we can say, oh, is it because you're hungry? And she can say yes.
Oh yeah.
Now that yes is not always accurate, but at least us as parent detectives, it allows us to get to the answer quicker sometimes. So that's been huge. And she started stringing words together, so she can ask for like more of something specifically, which has been helpful. Those are the big things for sure.
Yeah, no, adding that yes in is huge. I guess, it's very much like a yes no type of thing, right? And that no's used to mean yes, and now when the yes comes in, it might not be like accurate, maybe 25% of the time, but the other 75% of the time is huge, right? And I feel like that really gets the momentum going on the communication front when you guys start like confirming, you're like, oh yeah, like we're doing it, like we're adding in that language, right? And then it just gets like, again, for me, just stranger and stranger, as like you're not sure kind of like what they're catching, right? And then like something will click, and then they are confirming another thing, and you're like, okay, cool. And you're like, wait, what? You just understood like that,
Yeah.
So, and I feel like that yes is like one of those first big like epochs where you're like, wait, we're getting confirmation, like Houston, we have a yes, right?
It's huge. It's huge.
I love to hear it. That's a big step. I'm glad to hear you guys are going through some happy and maybe some tumultuous times with your little girl. Taking a step forward into the fantasy world, which has consumed my life in a dark pit of trade fervor for the last 48 hours, as Mel has reminded me that I've become a fantasy demon again. Sam, you're standing at 5-6. You are 8th in scoring with 1,128 points, and you are also 9th in points against, meaning you have the most. There's only 3 people that have more points with you than 1,192. You've won your last 2, but you're 0-3 in your division. If we just start there, does anything pop to mind when you hear all that data?
Yeah, man, the slow start. I feel like I've been plagued by them the last few years. That 0-3 in the division sucks, and then going 5-3 out of the division. Now I got to win out against the teams I'm defeated against. So I've been saying it all year. I've been pretty happy with my team. I've had to kind of fight my way through, make a lot of moves to stay alive, get off injured people, get more competitive. But I'm happy with it. I look at my team this week, and it's a little boom or bust, but it's in a much, much better position than it was 3-4 days ago when I was staring down Waddle on bye, Jamar on bye, Um, so in a bad RB2 situation, I feel like bad wide receiver situation. So I'm happy with the moves that I made. Obviously, you never want to be the one getting rid of one of fantasy's preeminent players in Jamar
Uh-huh.
Chase, but I
Yeah,
unfortunately had no choice, and I think I've done the best I can to replace that value as much as possible. It's in a risky way, but we'll see. I think it helps. It helps locking down Josh Allen for 8 points on Thursday night, and hopefully
or
keep this dream alive one more week.
yeah, I not only holding the Angel of Death at 8 points, but Drake being out, right? Because yeah, Evans just the Cerberus of the Drake, CD, and Puka was just looking like an impossible task to overcome, along with the Angel of Death there. But no, and we were talking a little bit before we hopped on here, and I know Springfield has 7 new players. You're probably up there this week, right? In trades, you're probably up there. And then taking a peek at activity. I didn't go to the full detail like I did last week with B, but you are now tied with Brendan for 82 moves overall. I'm still in second with 68. I'll probably drop this, for the next couple ones, just because I don't think that anyone's going to get close to you, B, or me on that front. With your 2 trades, you're up to a smooth even dozen. I'm at a dozen as well, and I think Brendan and Spring are not far behind on that. So on the trade front, first thing that comes to mind early on for me was you moving on from Jaden Daniels, and I think that again, like, you're one of a few managers that would be willing to take that sort of risk that early on. And your recap of this week, I think, was great. Really repositioning yourself for what your current standing was. And that, yeah, I wasn't expecting you to ship Chase, but with the buy or the suspension, I suppose, and the Waddle buy, it makes a ton of sense. So anything you want to touch on? Having achieved the 70 threshold for good manager rating from Ken, and a dozen trades. Do you have any more trades coming? And any thoughts on your activity so far?
Well, I think I've been forced into my activity a lot this season.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I've been making a conscious effort to like make more moves. I mean, unfortunately, I think I've had to make the moves. I drafted a wide receiver core that was a whole bunch of what I thought on paper were wide receiver 2s and 3s, and I needed one of them to maybe pop, like a Terry McLaurin last year. Unfortunately, I think the total games played between the 3 receivers I drafted as starters, of a possible, what are we at now? 33 games, I think combined they've played like 12 games or something like that this season. So to get off all that, that required a lot of movement. Yeah, and then same with the trades, just having to do that. I hope that next year I will find myself in a position where I don't have to trade and move my way out of it, because I do think I've gotten super lucky this year. That Jaden Daniels trade was not conventional. By far on paper, I got the short end of the stick on that, but it's something that I sort of saw the writing on the wall and had to do. Like, I was already at a point where I couldn't figure out if this like knee injury was going to be a 2 or 3 week thing and no quarterback situation. And obviously it turned out way in my favor. And I feel like I can't remember a year where trades have like done me so well throughout the season. Yeah, there's one more big test this week to see how, if AJ and Zay are going to combine for 3, or if they're going to be the wide receiver 2s with one upside. I think they can be. So yeah.
No, it's been fun. I don't want to touch too much more on the trades because I want to get to our topic, scoring and format. But quick rundown of your roster as it stands now. Again, with a little bit left on the time trade, you're rolling out Drake May, which until last week, I haven't actually ever looked at like points scored total, which was again one of my kind of go-to weekly. We'll send off screenshots to everybody. But Drake May is up there, right? He's like top 5 points scored on the year. We've covered a little bit AJ Brown, Zay Flowers, rolling out Yosefas with chased out this week. Still hold on to Tez after the dud last week, but I still agree there's some league winner in there. Jane Higgins looks like he's the guy, in the rookie pairing there. John Mechie, Adonai Mitchell, Tyquan Thornton, flyers that might be gone at any point here. Running backs stuck with Gibbs. I think you demanded the gold price for him all year, and no one was willing to pay it. Dowdle, Tucker, Hubbard. Looking a little crispy there at the RB2 position, maybe, but Dowdle's obviously shown an elite ceiling. Tight end. Speaking of elite ceilings, with little Kyler gone, Trey McBride, I think is 101. Bowers has the same ceiling, but I don't think we're going to see it. Any quick thoughts as we're wrapping up roster talk?
Yeah, just that Gibbs is the only one that I drafted, and I don't want to have to do that again next year. I hate cycling an entire team.
Yeah. All right. Beautiful. I didn't realize that, but looking at it now, holy smokes, man. Yeah. One remains, and that's a hell of a one to remain. So looking at the division, you got on paper the best record division. So Tom standing at 74, with his elite 13-25 now, first in scoring. Ben somehow magically 7-4 with his 9th scoring squad with 11-25, 66, which the 11-25, you are 3 points more points scored than Ben. And then Evan sitting at 6-5, third in scoring. And so I have the wrong number written down there, so I'm not going to read that off. But how do you feel like, we know you got to win out, but let's just talk about your division as a whole. How do you feel like things are gonna settle out with these last 3 weeks?
I think Tom will be fine. He'll take the 1 seed into the playoffs. I think the Evan and Ben situation are strange. Obviously, Ben moved some big pieces. Bijan's gone. Josh is injured. See if he can keep that magic going and squeak through with a couple wins. Evan, the Drake situation, PCL sprain, we'll see. If I had to list it right now, I think Tom's he'll be fine. Either win out or go 2-1. He'll take the 1 seed in the playoffs. Evan is going to sneak in with that 4th seed, first highest wild card. Ben, I think, is going to be 5th seed. And unfortunately, that's going to leave me, I'm hoping to get 1 of 2 to break my 5-9 curse. Yep.
Yeah. I think I'm right there with you on Tom. I don't think it's a question. He's got the best roster. He's also been taking the most points to the face, which is always fun.
Crazy.
I didn't realize that Ben's scoring capacity was so bad. And I knew he was in some mud fights, but I thought that it was a little bit more of an effort, on his end, as opposed to just kind of getting the right end of those mud fights. And then, Evan, already with some information, right? Here we are Saturday morning looking at a Josh Allen 8-ball and Drake Alice. His squad looks very beatable at this point. And so if I'm, making a call right now, I say you have that over Evan, and then Evan's got Ben and Tom to pace it out. So he's losing another one. So if he's ending up at 7-7, is that enough to take that 4 seed? I'm probably leaning no. Again, selfishly, I'm the one that's looking to leapfrog everybody as the 6-5er, right? But I would say, your season probably comes down to Tom, right? I think you've got a fighter's chance against the 2 guys. It's just Tom. Do you have Tom next week or is it week?
Tom next week and Ben week 14. Yep.
So for all the marbles, that's how I would see it. Is your season comes down to Tom, and however those matchups look. So, any other final thoughts on the division, or maybe just the league divisions as a whole?
Home stretch, boys. Good luck, everyone. Can't believe we blinked and here we are back where we started. So let's everyone get home safe.
Yeah. And on a side note, spring's usually one that fires off like the playoff betting. I don't know if we're too deep into it at this point, but I feel like we have so many different scenarios alive right now. Probably we would have been better to get this in before Thursday night and we had some information on how these matchups are going to go. But spring, if you hear this, we got a half day to get that going. And I wouldn't mind firing off that, form. Into our topic for the week, Sam, as probably the friskiest person to introduce updates to scorings and settings. I figured that would be a great topic for us to get into. as the league is approaching or 18 years. Yahoo being one of the two behemoths with ESPN as the platform. That I think we're approaching the point where we don't particularly need to go deeper into format updates, but it's definitely something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, and I know that you spent some time thinking about. So first up, taking a big swing, platform migration. So we've got here in the notes Sleeper, and then I also brought up another platform called My Fantasy League. It's what the football guys push, but it's kind of like an equivalent to Sleeper, where it's a very customizable platform. And I would give Sleeper the edge just as a platform because it's got a more modern API if we're talking about Datakin continuing his work. But just the idea that moving to a newer platform, for lack of better terms, would allow us more flexibility in getting into everything. And then maybe just like a side note, we've had some weird Yahoo updates this year. Springfield, right, had a couple of those things, and I'm guessing that's probably not completely things we can rule out for these other platforms, but my guess is more modern platforms wouldn't have these issues. So migrating platforms, Sam, what are your thoughts?
I'm a fan. I think that Yahoo's just a little clunky, a little legacy. The biggest thing, and this falls on your shoulders, is Yahoo's really convenient that we can just go look up the entire history of the league since the first couple of years. So making sure we extract all that information and put it somewhere in a database where it's easily accessible. Assuming we can do that, like, I'm all for the move. I think it's time.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I've not taken an effort to see whether or not you could like import previous seasons into Sleeper. I wonder if that's like a thing, or if it would just have to live off, cloud somewhere. But I have looked into exporting the data into a database, and I know that there's like an upper limit or a lower limit that I think it cuts off at like 2011 or 2010. And I think you can see the information on Yahoo, if I remember correctly, but it's kind of, they don't show everything. And it's been a little while since I've gone that far back, but yeah, I think that would be a little bit of an effort to dig everything out, but worth it if we're going to be moving the platform like that. So again, not something I'm going to be banging the drums to do, probably this year, but maybe at some point in the future, especially if we start getting a little bit more, into the scoring and settings update. So on that note, scoring settings, Sam, you provided the notes for this week, so I really appreciate that. You had as low-hanging fruit to drop our defenses and special teams, and potentially swapping out a flex for that. And then the ability to trade fab, which currently Yahoo doesn't offer, but it's something that we would have available to us with more modern apps. Again, don't want to speak for the league, but I feel like the drop DST again has been on the ballot before, and it's gotten close. And so I don't think it's crazy that we see this move here. For me, the bigger talking point on this one is, do we replace it with a flex? Because we are already starting so many players, and that I would say that we're already pretty deep when it comes to firing people off. So dropping DST, adding a flex, trading fab. What are your thoughts, Sam?
I think 100%. I mean, I'm on the drop the DST train. I think the vote was 6-6 last season, so I'm pretty sure we'll get it the majority this year. I do think it makes sense to add a flex spot. It'll make us be deep in terms of who we're starting, but I don't think we want to mess with scoring too much. It makes sense to replace defense with another slot. Otherwise, we're going to see probably a marginal drop in season-long scoring, which maybe is not a big issue, but and then trading fab, I think, just adds another layer to trades, another layer of complexity. I'd rather see fab get traded than just some random flyer waiver pickup. I think it's more valuable to trade the actual dollars.
Yeah, I'm there with you on that one. And just taking a quick look at our fab leftover, Tom's really the only one that has, I guess Casey does too, has any like meaningful amount of fab. He's got 67, Casey's got 50, but then everybody else has either got Luker's got 24, but everyone else has just kind of got pocket change at this point. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 players, and Jay's got $3 left. So essentially 5 players, roughly half the league, have already catch out at this point. And not to say that my 75 on Troy Franklin was a mistake, but I think just because of how little fab means, I kind of treat it that way. And, you know, that there's, again, definitely an argument to say that you shouldn't be taking as big of swings on players like that. But I definitely think it adds another dimension to fab for sure. And I definitely would not be taking these kind of errant swings at players if there was that added dimension of fab in there. So I'm a big fan of that one. And the DST stuff, if we're gonna take it like just like a little peek ahead, the DST thing for me is most interesting if we start talking about IDP leagues where you're starting like the other half of like the fantasy roster, right? And as somebody who, again, used to not be able to spell football, but was playing fantasy football, it was fantasy that kind of got me into learning, you know, like offensive schemes, and you could be able to like learn that kind of stuff. And so I, at this point, would look forward to like an IDP aspect of our league. And I don't know, again, that's a pretty big change. I'm not sure if we would have like a separate IDP league to start, or if we just like combined everything, you know, to begin with. I actually haven't looked into IDP enough to know whether or not like people are starting full offensive and full defenses, or it's just like a completely
Yeah,
separate.
typically, I mean, you can kind of do whatever you want. I've seen leagues where people start head coaches, so punters, and we've talked about punters, but typically, I think IDP is usually like in a league like ours, it would just be one player. So it really depends, like how much effort and attention do we want to be given this thing? You know, do you really want to be dissecting like defense and defensive players? But just quickly to run down the other kind of long shot things in terms of roster slots and changes, IDP, Superflex, that's something I've done in the past. I'm personally not a fan of it, but I know that's been mentioned a few times over the last year or so in our league.
Yeah.
You brought up this year advocating for the 1 RB slot and keep everything else flex. I'm personally not a fan of that, but I understand where you're coming from on that, especially the past couple of years. And one that I do find interesting, and maybe this works with like axing defense and adding a slot, is the rookie only slot. I think that one's pretty cool. Obviously, there's some big guns that can go in that slot, but it gets you invested a little bit more in up and coming players, give them some more value. So I think that's all worth a discussion and conversation. Not sure anything I'll push forward to next year. I really like the rookie only slot, but you know, we've also talked about adding an IR slot and what we want to do with the IR rules. So there's certainly a lot for us to talk about. I think that will not drastically change the way we play the game, but can definitely improve the gameplay.
Yeah. So for me, it makes sense to wrap up like talking about the settings bit. So you had talking about, we have our 6 bench slots, which is new because we dropped one, right? So we're a little bit lighter. I would say, again, I was against losing the depth, right? And I would say that I've been fine, right? If I'm feeling out how stuff is right now, that as much as I feel like adding more bench spots favors, you know, people with stronger or deeper knowledge with fantasy, it was also frustrating. I feel like Casey would always have like a backup running back that I really wanted, but because we had that extra bench slot, it just would just sit and like die on his end of his bench. Whereas this year, a lot of those guys that I just love getting my little crabby, you know, pinchers on are out there for me to like add drop. And so I think that I would switch my vote from having to add one more bench spot to what we have now. And do you feel like we're at a good spot with our 6 bench slots as we stand now?
Yeah, I think we found the right happy medium. You know, Luke mentioned it earlier in this year. When you look at most of these deep stash articles, most of those guys are rostered, even though we only 100%. Have the 6 bench spots. Last year, I think we found ourselves in a spot where like you're rostering like real deep stash. Like we're talking 2 or 3 guys need to get injured for that person to have any relevance. I just wasn't as much of a fan of that. It just, just wasn't a fan. I can understand the argument for doing it that way, but I like where we're at now. I do think another happy medium is adding the second IR spot,
Yeah.
because especially with there's just so many more injuries these days, and that's really disadvantageous. If you've got two guys that are undroppable, well, one of them's going to end up parked in a roster spot.
Yep.
So I'm for the argument of adding an IR spot, or maybe taking a look at how the IR rules work.
Yep.
In ESPN, for example, if someone's ruled out, you can throw them in IR, and they can live in IR until they play a game again. So even if they're questionable during the week, they can be in your IR spot, and you're still able to make moves and transactions. So maybe that's something to consider for us as well.
Yeah, I like that as well, because in the LA League that we play in, there's 2 IR spots, and that definitely allows you a lot more flexibility, right, to adjust to those things. And that maybe that was part of where my argument for having an extra bench spot was coming from. But again, you're not ultimately solving like a bench slot problem, you're solving like an IR problem, right? And the IR has been kind of a vexing position or a slot for a lot of people, because a few times, I think last year spring and this year Luke, either privately or publicly said something about like, oh, Ken, you've got like a player that's out in your IR spot, right? And so even the mechanics of the IR, I don't feel like a well-known thing. But it's definitely worth like taking a look at, right? And I think that like that ESPN mechanic of if you have an IR player out, but then they're doing that weird, limited practice, questionable, doubtful out kind of dance. It definitely plugs you up on that aspect. So I could see that, but again, I think we would be looking at a replatforming. I don't think Yahoo has the ability to update its functionality on the IR slots. So maybe not a near-term topic. Anything else you want to say on that before I'd like to go just say a few words on Superflex?
No, yeah, go for it.
Okay. So the Superflex bit. So I think I was one of a few people too that was making the push for us to go to half point PPR, because I think if you were kind of like looking at where like the average league was, that the industry kind of settled somewhere between like half point PPR and PPR as being like a better representation scoring wise of like where the game is at now, right? And I think that Superflex hasn't become the standard yet, but I feel like the momentum is kind of going that direction. And the idea that like that second Superflex spot, being able to start quarterbacks, like quarterbacks are what make the NFL go round, right? And so there's 32 of them, and we're only starting 12, right? So it kind of devalues that spot, which doesn't match fantasy, which also kind of rolls into this running back slot argument that I got caught in, again, mainly just because I tend to run zero or hero running backs, schemes. And so I'm getting my hand caught in the cookie jar because I'm trying to play that backup running back game. And I could see how that would play out in Superflex as well, right? Where your QB2, if you don't have like a dedicated QB2, can start getting real frisky. You're rolling out Tyler Shuck or whoever the hell you're rolling out, but rather than being kind of late to the game, I would say that, again, it would be interesting to be earlier to the game when it comes to the kind of average format. And especially with the league being so quarterback driven, I think that would be an interesting aspect to add. All that being said, our 6-point touchdown, I think, makes it even more frisky to make that move, because I think that that's an oddity about our league that helps to correct that quarterback value aspect. And so my first thought is that we would have to drop 6 to 4 for passers if we move to Superflex. Otherwise, you could get into some really weird top-heavy quarterback strategies that might not, again, add the flexibility that the Superflex is meant to add. So boiling it back down, I'm very interested in Superflex. I am in for moving to Superflex, but it is a pretty big change that I think we would need to drop 6 to 4. And again, we would need to re-platform. So thoughts on Superflex, Sam?
Yeah, I'm not a fan on Superflex. So we've got a 12-team league. If you assume that most teams will have at least 2 quarterbacks on their roster, what does that leave us? 6 to 8 quarterbacks that are going to be available on a weekly basis if something goes wrong. I think that there's just too many injuries, and someone's whole season can be shot if they lose a quarterback, and then they've got to, be streaming, Gino or Shug or Tyrod Taylor, whoever,
or Jacoby Brissett.
Or Brissett. Yeah, I mean, there are times that it works out, but I don't know. I just think that it tips the scales too much to luck in bad circumstance, and we have enough of that already. So that's just my take. I mean, obviously a lot of people play Superflex. I understand the argument for it. I think it works better in a 10-team league.
Okay. Well, On another note, keeper is another kind of big change that might be a stepping stone to eventually transitioning to dynasty. For me, keeper, the format where you keep 3 players that you drafted or you picked up off of, waivers from the year before, whether you're adding $5 to the auction value, you're very, very much advantaging the players who have that ability to like pick out those deep guys, right? And get them for last year's value, right? So like JSN would be a good example of somebody where like last year Tom drafted JSN for probably very little, right? And that would very much probably, I'm guessing, be one of his keepers because obviously he was worth a lot more this year. And if we were drafting again today, he'd be the one that we're talking about fetching that $70 value. And I think for me, the keeper dynasty aspect kind of draws in this philosophical debate about traditionally I've been more in favor or advocating for the format that matches our current level of skill, right? Because without again being too obtuse, I think the easiest way to look at our league is Tom is on platform or tier 1, and then we're all sharing platform 2, right? And so anytime we change the platform to increase the skill cap, then we're allowing Tom to take another lap on us. And so I would say my argument against changing that stuff historically has been like, well, let's try and limit Thomas's ability to take us out. I've kind of changed on that a little bit as the last year or two has gone on to where like, let's just like let the chips fall where they may. And so I, as a keeper person, would prefer us just to go straight into dynasty. And dynasty has been one of those tracks that I've been thinking about joining for a long time, because as I've gotten deeper into the weeds and I'm, rostering these guys that are 2-3 injuries away, right? Or still looking at Sion Vaki as a viable person, right? Off of Detroit's, like running depth, right? This linebacker who got, drafted by Dan Campbell. That dynasty is like where those things can matter, right? And so I would say where I'm at now is I think that keeper might be an interesting play, but if we're going to just play around with this long-term thing, like fuck it, let's go dynasty. How about you, Sam?
So I think on paper that makes sense to me, but I do think that keeper and dynasty are drastically different games, and they require drastically different inputs. I'm a huge fan of keeper, and I think it's something that we should transition to next year. We can make it what we want it to be. We can make the rules. You keep 1 player, you keep 2, or you keep 3. We can put caps on how long you can keep a player. What we want to do about inflation, is it 5? Is it 10? So we have control over all that. I'm a huge fan of keeper, and I think we should do it because it impacts our trade dynamic and our draft dynamic. Dynasty. Dynasty requires you to have an intimate knowledge of college football, a deep knowledge of the rookie class coming into the NFL. The rosters are 25, 30, 40 deep. It's like it is a massive commitment from time, and it's a very long game. I mean, it's kind of like acting like an NFL GM, which I think is really, really cool. But I think it's a huge jump to go from where we are now to a dynasty league. Obviously, we've been doing this for 2 decades. And so this group, it makes sense. I see how it fits. I don't know that I'm personally ready to like start following college football and brush up on the rookie class. And I mean, I spend too much time on my little 15-person team that resets every year. So if I had like a 40-person roster and I'm trading draft picks and I think there's some stepping stone. I think we would lose a lot of competitiveness and maybe even some like activity level of some people if we went to dynasty. So yeah.
No, I think that's a good argument of the stepping stone towards these longer wave competitions, and that keeper maintains the redraft style with a little bit of that tossed in there, and let's not upset our burgeoning trade market by switching hard to dynasty. We're doing pretty good on time, Sam. I want to touch just quickly on like fun other ways to play fantasy. You have Top Chef League, which I'm familiar with. Guillotine, is that similar to Top Chef style?
Yeah. So lowest point score gets axed. They go to Last
Mm.
Chance Kitchen. Um,
Oh, right.
and yeah, where
Yeah.
they get another chance to survive. Essentially, you play in Last Chance Kitchen until there's like 5 teams left, and whoever's still standing in Last Chance Kitchen rejoins for the playoffs.
Okay.
So it doesn't make sense for our league. We don't want any teams out like in week 2,
Yeah.
but just a fun way to play. But let
Yeah.
me pitch you something for the consolation bracket, because I
Okay.
do think it's something that we'd love doing and starting this year. $20 buy-in, winner take all. The goal is to score the least amount of points possible. You want to get as close to 0 as possible with your entire lineup.
Uh-huh.
So you're picking up, third string running backs and things like that. But here's the catch. If a player scores 0, you get a 25-point penalty. So you get plus 25 for that player that scores 0. So you can't just be picking up, inactive players and all that.
Right. Huh.
So you finally get to maybe start your guy Sloan Vaki or whatever if you think he's going to have,
Yeah.
1 carry for -1 yards or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's a fun dynamic, just to totally flip it on its head and keep people involved through the end of the season in a totally different way than, the classic fantasy.
No, I like that, because then you're staying away from the player pool, that the playoff folks are going to be going after, and you're still, I think that, as like from a historical standpoint, this is just more like a personal gripe or resentment that I'm holding, because I think I was a previous holder of the low scoring record before. I think it was Ben and Springfield decided to roll out kickers one week, in the consolation bracket, right? And so the record book shows one of them when, like, truly it's not, right, that was just them making a choice to do ignore that they were playing Yahoo for a second, whereas I was actually playing to the extent that I was playing and put up that score. But I think that that's an interesting, way to mess around with the playoffs. So yeah, I think I'd be on board. I'm personally hoping to not think about that this year as a playoff hopeful. But I think that that's a cool thing to consider. And I'd love to hear what the league has to say about it. I'm not super clear on our time. I think we're running a little long, so I'm going to jump straight into field or bucket. Sam, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do we see any more trades today?
Field or bucket? I feel it. Feel it.
JMO continues his hot streak against Jameis and the G-Men.
I feel it.
The Love Christian stack goes apeshit this week.
Fuck it.
Trevion goes nuclear against Cincy.
Fuck nuclear. No, I think he'll have a good game, but yeah.
All right. Spring gets his 7 new players on the same page heading into week 12.
I feel it.
Ben does not need anyone but a healthy Lamar to make a run.
Fuck it.
JSN goes supernova, challenging the Angel of Death for the fantasy MVP.
Feel it.
AJ Brown has a squeaky wheel get right game against Dallas.
Fuck it.
Puka and CD overcome the Angel of Death's dismal 8 performance.
Fuck it.
The Outlier traded away CMC at the right value and at the right time.
I feel it.
Kareem Hunt makes his classic late season monster run.
I don't know about monster, but I feel him being valuable. Yeah.
All right. The Lukening with his last minute trading flurry overtakes Jay to keep his playoff hopes alive this week.
I feel it.
The Lukening is a special thing this year. Jay's Indy super stack proves itself against the rumbling KC squad.
Fuck it.
Fuck it. All right. That was Feel It or Fuck It. And I've lost my tabs for my there it is, outro. We don't want the outro, we want space time. As another person, Sam, who's not a SoCal native, welcome to Space Time. Can you give us some of your favorite fall memories?
Oh, I mean, this is more of like an emotion, but in Colorado, fall is just like the most beautiful time of year. The leaves start changing. There's a crispness. There's a certain smell to those dying, changing leaves. There's a briskness that gets in the air. and it's like so cozy, especially with football going on. Ski season's right on the horizon, and so I was always really excited for that. So just the overall feeling of that period of transition
Yeah.
is my fondest. That's my fondest memory of fall for sure.
Okay. So, as somebody who's a Southern California person and has spent 33 years of my life in that area, fall and seasons in general were just this unknown concept that you read about in books, right? That you kind of had this like vague understanding of. But now that January will be 2 years that we've been up here, we've been through the seasons now twice, and winter will be our third time having come up in the middle of winter. And this fall has felt special. That I don't know if it was just that we had just had Amelia last fall and that like we weren't as aware of what was going on outside of just what was happening with our little one, but getting to watch the leaves change color like day after day, and especially like where we live off of kind of like what used to be a main street, like down a little, what used to be like a little road. And then now, there's a whole bunch of modern, super tight buildings, but there's this beautiful row of trees. And I can't remember what color they were, during spring and summer, but in fall, they changed to this just like iridescent pinky red, and so you're like, wherever you were out and coming home to, then you're just covered by this like pink cloud of like heavenly sunset colors as they're changing, from their original greenish to the pinkish. And then as it's just in full flare, you're just like, man, this is like, I feel like I'm flying in the clouds at sunset every time you come home, and it kind of like resets you as you're coming home. And so this is absolutely not something that palm trees do, right? The palm trees are just up there doing their thing, hanging just a tad bit of, shade over their nuts, right? But I can understand at an experiential level how fall meant something to you. So like one of the things that the girls love is that the sidewalk is gone now and it's just leaves, right? And so when we go on walks, it's just and there's just leaves everywhere, right? So can you give us like leaf? I'm imagining that a young Sam had more than a few stories with a pile of leaves.
Oh yeah, I mean, our yard growing up just had a ton of trees that lost all their leaves, and that it doesn't happen in Southern California. Trees don't really lose their leaves, and so it was something that needed to be done once or twice in the fall, is going and raking up the yard. You can't just let the leaves sit because they deteriorate, they mold, they mildew. And so yeah, you get these massive piles of leaves, and literally like running and jumping in the piles of leaves was a real thing. It's like this pastime. It was so fun, and there's just a sense of community that kind of emerges from that too, because your parents are raking up the leaves in your yard and your neighbor across the street are doing the same thing, and all the kids are running around jumping in all the piles of leaves and everyone's laughing, and I don't know, there's just a closeness, like the entire community is bundling up, and they're grateful for this like beautiful time of year before the cold comes and the days get short, and it's hard to put into words really, but it's magic. Yeah.
And one of the things, talking to Ben about his experience out in Wisconsin, I think I brought up grilling because when we were doing our trip looking at the Midwest, we stopped in Madison, and we were kind of at the tail end of winter going into spring, and it was like the first day I think that it had been in like the 40s, right? And so like that community, people all rolled out their barbecues. And I mean, according to Ben, people don't stop barbecuing, right? Like in the middle of winter, right? So maybe the barbecue had been there, but they're out sitting in chairs, like, and it's like almost every neighbor, right, is out. And they might not necessarily like be talking to each other, but like everybody's posted up. Everybody's got the grill, like we were coming back to like our Airbnb, you see all those little smoke trails coming off, right? And like as a Southern California, it's like 40 degrees. What are you doing, right? But like everyone else in Wisconsin is like out in like shirts and shorts, right? Because this is like, oh, spring's here, it's 40 degrees. I can't believe how good the weather is, right? And like with fall, right, like that sense of like wanting to be out, kind of a little bumbled up, right? But then like you want to be like out in that transition. And then where we're at now with fall is all of our beautiful pink leaves are on the ground now, and one tree is like hanging on to just like a few dozen leaves, right? And then there's like the different varieties of trees that are annuals, and that like all but one variety have lost all of their leaves. And so it is starting that transition to winter, or we're finishing that transition to winter. And as winter approaches, I think both Mel and I got hit with like the seasonal affective disorder last year, because it's just our first full throated winter. Not that we really get crazy winter, but there's like that natural kind of like sadness, right? That comes with like, oh, the leaves are gone, right? These beautiful things that like we're so happy, and they're like this cool, nature to how everything is transitioning, and now it's gone, right? And now all that's left is like rain and snow and maybe some ice, and the days are getting shorter. And I know you talked about ski season, but what is that like transition to winter, or what was winter like for you?
Winter's like this weird dichotomy where especially when it snows, it's like just this magical thing. The scenery is pristine. I mean, I don't know if you've experienced this yet, but in Colorado, we would get a ton of sun. So even in the winter, it might be like 18 degrees out, but it's crystal blue skies, sun's out. You go to bed that night, and then you wake up the next morning, and there'd be 18 inches of snow stacked on your window when you go look outside.
Yeah.
And back growing up, we didn't have like the weather app and the cell phone and everything like that. A lot of this stuff just kind of happened. If you didn't watch the news, you didn't know it was coming. And that is such a magical feeling, to like wake up in the morning and look out your window and see the world transformed into this winter wonderland. And then in Colorado, what would be crazy is like the sun would pop back out around noon, and by the time the sun set, all that snow would have been melted and gone. So it's just this wild kind of thing. And you combine that with the fact that all the trees are barren and their leaves are gone, and those summer days with the breeze blowing through the trees feels so far away and so foreign. And then it helps being a skier, because snow represents like this excitement and this adventure. And when you see it on the ground, the mountains probably got it too. And like, I can't wait to get up there this weekend.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. So we don't get like that much snow at any one point in time, right? So like this area is known for being like overcast, dreary, rainy, and we did get 2 snows last year. And again, I hear you on like there's a little bit magic lost, right, with our access to data now, because you can just kind of like look up anything in like almost like hourly real time, right? Like, oh, it's going to start snowing in an hour or 3 hours, right? And you can go look at like the radio image, right, of like the clouds moving towards you, right? But we got our first snow where we like lived in a place that like we called home, and got to the beginnings of the flurry, right? And then you see like the little, and then it starts coming down a little consistently, and then you start seeing it on the ground. And then like within a few hours, because it was like starting at night and then kind of went into the night, right? And so we're watching like the backyard just start disappearing into this like white clean haze, and you wake up and just everything is white. And so I don't think we ever got more than like an inch or 2 of snow, and then like it would rain and then just boom, gone, right? But yeah, like that transition of whiting out everything. And for me, the little flurries are probably the most magical thing, because I'm just not used to the way that snow and flurries work, right? And that when there's just a little bit of dusting like on the asphalt, and like the wind picks up and it does all these fun little swirly snowy dances, gets the feels going. And I could definitely see how having thought back to all the poetry that you're like forced to read in high school, middle school, and just had very little connection to it as a Southern California person, that like I can understand, like going for like a nice walk in the snow, or like these transitions, and how that would really affect, anybody, let alone like a young person who's waking up to 18 inches of snow on their window and is excited to go hit the slopes. So I'm a little uncertain on time, so we'll give it 2 more minutes because I forgot to start the timer this time. But anything else seasons wise that pop up for you? Because I can hit a spring a little bit. But anything else for you as a Colorado person when I say
Oh, I mean,
seasons, just generally?
yeah, I mean, you mentioned talking to Ben about people rolling out the grills when the sun
Yeah.
peaks out and it's only 40
Yeah.
degrees outside in the spring, and I can
Yep.
relate to that so much because
Yeah.
in Colorado there'd be like an evening coming out of the winter where you could feel warmth on the breeze.
Mhm.
And that's a relative term. Like warmth meant that like when the wind blew, it didn't make you feel like you were gonna die.
Right. Yeah.
And it just elicits this feeling of like it's about to happen. Spring's about to be here.
Yeah.
And this amazing
Yeah.
time of regrowth and flowers on the trees and leaves coming back and the days getting longer. And living in Southern California, like I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say, especially in San Diego, that more than 90% of our days are in the realm of perfect in terms of
Yep.
weather.
Hmm.
But when you have something that is so consistent like that, it becomes easy to take it for granted. And
Yeah.
the magic in a place like Colorado or in the Pacific Northwest, the magic of fall and spring are how they force you to reflect and be
Hmm.
grateful for this simple thing like that you have no control over, which
Yeah.
is weather. Yeah.
Yep. And for us, that forced reflection as you're coming out of winter going into spring, again, our winters aren't very harsh and we don't have like that cutting cold. We have the gray, but what the Pacific Northwest does have that like I wasn't super aware of coming up here is flowers. And it's, Portland's the rose city, and there's apparently a whole bunch of cherry blossom trees and then other types of trees that flower in this giant flurry like at the beginning of spring. And so in the inverse of the leaves turning and falling, you are driving around, it's bleak, it's everything's wet, everything's damp. I love moss, so that's kind of awesome for the moss, and it
Mhm.
gets to grow and like turn that really good green. But then the spring for us is you start seeing the little buds and the little starts of leaves on the trees, and all of them are doing this, right? And then you are watching the buds grow on the little trees, and then you see that first little crack of color, and just this vibrant pink or vibrant red is just hiding. And then when spring hits is like that first time that tree just decides to flower, and you're just like, oh my god, right? And the first
Yeah.
time we were up here, I didn't know that stuff was like you're driving around, and you turn around and there's this tree and it's in this magnificent bright pink, and you're just like, oh, and I was like, what is going on? And then you get like, I'm excited right now just thinking about like spring coming again, right? And you're like looking forward to these like seasonal chapters of your life. And so as we're wrapping up this episode and as we're wrapping up fall and we're making our way into winter, I'm looking forward to a season of rest. And not falling into a depression this year. And looking forward to continuing the connection that we've got going in our league. Sam, do you have any thoughts for the people on our way up?
Just good luck to everyone in fantasy, but also happy Thanksgiving. Hope everyone gets good quality time with the family and heads into this holiday season full, well, and rested.
Love it, Sam. So in a universe overflowing or empty with star stuff, I'm glad to have shared this moment with you. Now, you are loved from here until fantasy football till death. And